Today we're going to be talking about London, Diamond League London. So many great performances that we had. I'm only going to talk about a little bit of them. I'm really going to be talking about like the sprint events, the 100, the men's 400, the women's 200, the women's 400-meter hurdles. I mean, they had the mile. They had so many crazy events today. You know, uh, a lot of people are talking about this men's 100, right? They saw Oblique Seville. He took it away in a 9.86. They had Noah Lyles. They had Zarno Hughes. They had Akani Sabine. They had Lesile Tobogo. I heard so many things about this 100. How, man, Noah Lyles ran only 10 seconds. Oblique Seville killed him. It's going to be a sweep. It's going to be Jamaica top three. It's going to be all this stuff. Now, mind you, as you can see, I'm repping. You know what I'm saying? I'm Jamaican, so I understand. Having the thought process of having Oblique Seville, on the top of your leaderboards, running that 986. But I want people to understand something. This is the same thing that he did last year, right? When Oblique Seville was healthy, last year when he was running these 200-meter straights and these Adidas 200-meter straights, and he was building up his strength. He was looking so good heading into the World Championships or the Olympics last year. Even the year before that for Budapest, he looked so good heading into the World Championships. And I'm not saying that this year can't be his year, but we have to put things in perspective. Just because you run a fast time like a 986 does not mean that you're just going to automatically just win the World Championship. One thing I will say that his start and transition was phenomenal. I haven't seen anyone start like that probably since like Shelly Ann Fraser Price. This guy separated from the competition so dramatically, so crazy, so he was just so explosive going through his gears. I mean, by the time anyone can react, but before the Zarno Hughes and Noah Lyles, who are renowned for their top end speed, before they were able to even get those engines going, the race was already done. Um, it was really phenomenal to see him run that kind of time. And I could say it's early, but it's not really early, right? Um, but for him to run this time in July 986 in such a dominant fashion against the Olympic champion, against the great British 100-meter champion, like the 200-meter guy, like 983 is a Zarno Hughes personal best. For him to run it against this kind of quality competition is really, really impressive. Um, One thing I would like to mention, though, is that, like Noah Lyles has said, it was his first 100-meter dash of the year, coming off an injury, coming off of a long preseason, coming off of running his 400. So it's very, very important to notice that Noah Lyles didn't get eighth, he didn't get seventh, he didn't get sixth, he only got second place. Was it a distant second place? Yeah, for sure. But he got second place, and it was a really, really quality run. One thing I noticed about Noah Lyles and the way he ran the 100, he had a pretty decent start. His transition was on point, but his transition to top end speed, it looked a lot swifter. He looked a lot lighter on his feet. He looked a lot better than he did. Time aside, he looked a lot better than he did um, when he ran in Monaco when he ran the 200. If you looked at some of his interviews, one of the things that he said was that he ran one of his fastest 200-meter like splits going through the curve at 10:2, right? So he's still building up. It was his fastest 100-meter opener, and the way that it looked pretty damn good. Especially, again, people have to notice that it wasn't just the fact of what kind of time he ran, but who he ran it against. He ran it against Akani Sabine, who was running these 9.9s and 9.8s so early in the season. Everyone was saying, "Man, this guy is going to be running super fast when it comes to the August World Championships." And mind you, he still can. He probably just reloaded, but it's not like, again, it's not like he got seventh or eighth place. He only got second place in his opening 100 of the year. So that's really, really impressive when it comes to the certain metrics I'm looking for. Another thing you have to consider is that Lesile Tobogo was also in this race. He's no scrub in the 100-meter himself, and he only got seventh place, right? He ran like a 10-12 or a 10-11. I'm not sure if he was feeling discomfort. Maybe his legs was messed up. No, there's no telling what the guy was dealing with. I mean, it is his third race in almost like a week and a half. He ran at Prefontaine, then Monaco, then here. So maybe he's just getting the race reps in. But it's very important to consider when it comes to a lot of these athletes that, they're doing multiple races. They're getting paid per race, especially because he's the Olympic 200-meter champion. But like I said, when you're trying to base it off of time and base it off of what a lot of these athletes are doing, I think Noah Lyles did a great job. Oblique Seville definitely did a great job, especially because he had an injury scare heading into the Jamaican trials. It's also noted to say that United States has not had their trials yet. So a lot of these athletes are still preparing for their trials. Oblique and Keishane, Keishane ran a phenomenal 985. Oblique ran, man, we talking about the 100, man. We talking about the 100 at London, and how Noah Lyles did a pretty decent job coming in second place. So, like I said, Oblique, man, he ran 986 coming off of the Jamaican trial. So definitely not a bad run from him. So we're gonna look to see how he continues to do. Um, let's see. We're gonna look at the women's 200-meter dash. So, man, this had to be one of the better races. It probably was up to par with Oblique Seville's 100, but the 200-meter for women was really pretty phenomenal. Julien Alfred put on a hell of a clinic. I mean, 21.71 into a negative headwind. I think that tied number 9 or number 10 all time on the list. In July, I mean, coming from an athlete, when you look back 2 years ago and she was running for University of Texas, she seemed like she seems like the ideal accelerator where 0 to 60, like a Christian Coleman, she's like a powerhouse, right? No one, I would have never, what's that? Man, try this meal, God means. I don't know what that means. But what I will say is that no one would have ever thought, I certainly would have never thought that this strong St. Lucian girl would be able to maintain the kind of speed endurance needed and strength needed to run a 21.71 in the 200. Crazy. So I was really happy to see that. And I was really impressed to see that 200-meter dash. It was really, really dope to see. A lot of people, especially the 100, 200-meter runners, they're like, yo, we don't want to run 300s in the preseason. We don't want to run 400s in the preseason. This is what happens. This is what happens when you run 400s and 300s in the preseason. You're able to hold that turnover and hold that power in the later part of her 200. So, like I said, her last 50 meters was beautiful, just bouncing on the track. I never saw that kind of technique from her before, where she just looks so effortless. Again, in a negative headwind, 21.6 probably in a positive with 1.5, 1.2 headwind. I mean, there's no one running that right now. There's a couple athletes that have the potential to run it, like a Sharika Jackson, like a Gabby Thomas, even a couple other athletes that are kind of like waiting in the wing. But other than that, man, you got to give it up for Julien Alfred. She's been putting on a clinic, running solo in a lot of these races, really work on her technique, her and her coach, Flo, and it's just really impressive to see. Another impressive showing in that women's 200 had to be Amy Hunt. She's someone that's been on the Diamond League circuit for the better part of this year. Really, really interesting athlete, very tall, kind of reminds me of the athlete from Norway a couple years ago. I forgot her name. I got to remember her name. But anyway, she just seems like the ideal 200-meter specialist. Very tall, very strong, has very great top end speed. I think she runs second leg for her country in the 4x1. And it was her and Dina Asher-Smith really like battling all the way through the line. Amy Hunt's been impressing me because it seems like every single week she's hitting a PR. And it's really impressive to see her hit that PR every single 2 weeks or every week or whatever the case is. And I mean, she's right like at 22.2, 22.3. I mean, a couple more PR, she's going to be hitting 21.9 pretty soon. So I know that's going to be coming. She's very competitive. She talks about that she has the ability to beat Julien Alfred Smith, and we know what it takes to beat her. I mean, better said, it's better to say it than we'll see when it happens. When we see her beat Julien Alfred Smith, we'll see how that happens. But it was just really cool to see that race. But Dina Asher Smith had a phenomenal run. She had a really phenomenal run. A very technical 200. You could tell that she ran her race. She didn't run Julien Alfred's race. She ran her race. Again, Julien Alfred has a PR of 10.7 that she ran multiple times this year. I think Dina Asher Smith maybe went 10.9 once, right? This year. So totally different ways in which you're going to run her race. And if you look at that race in terms of the technical execution of it, Dina Asher Smith, again, Julien Alfred pulled away, but Julien Alfred was able to maintain through the curve. And when she came off the curve and she continued to accelerate, she was able to, in the last 20 meters, snatch Amy Hunt, which is really impressive because Amy Hunt has really good top end speed, specifically in the last 50 meters of her run. So to see Dina Asher Smith able to close like that, where in the past she had struggled in the last 50 meters of her race. She really sets up the 200 in the first 150 and then tends to fade. Is really, really impressive to see. And I think the addition, again, of the strength work that Coach Flo has been having them do, the early season 400s and 200s has really helped them and will continue to help them throughout the rest of the season, where a lot of other athletes are fading. Um, I saw Addie Leke from Ireland back there in lane 8. She ran 22.5 in this race as well. She trains with Julien Alfred at the University of Texas. Again, another flow athlete, and her predominant event is the 400-meter dash. In an event that will no doubt take probably a 48 to medal in this year. I can see why she's running more 200s. That 22.5 was really impressive. I think it's a season's best for her. Back in college, I think she was like a 22.4, 22.3. So she's trying to get back to that kind of speed needed to be able to hang on with the ladies, to come through at 23 so she could set up her race a little bit better in the 400. So it was really great to see her. Very tall athlete. She's probably like 5'11", 6 foot. Very majestic to see her keep up with these ladies. So very, very impressive. So as we move along, we're going to move over to the men's 400-meter dash. So yo, last year I did a prediction for the 400-meter dash, right? And one of my dark horses that I had in the 400-meter dash was Charles Dobson. And I think Charles didn't end up, either he got hurt, something happened where he didn't show up the way I thought he was going to show up. But he's a very scary guy. Again, very similar to a Quincy, not Quincy Wilson, Quincy, the big Quincy, the Gold Grills Quincy, the OG Quincy, very familiar, very similar to him. He has a hell of a finish in his last 100 meters, 120 meters of these 400s. Very strong. And Charles Dobson has been doing this all year last year, all year the year before that. He's a previous 200-meter specialist, but for some reason is able to finish as if he has an 800-meter base under him. And when I say this was probably one of the best 100-meter finishes I've seen in a while since Big Quincy did it at the Paris Olympics, this dude had to be in like 6th place, 7th place. And for him to come through in such emphatic fashion to finish his 400 like that was pretty crazy. And he did it to a PR in front of the London crowd running 44.1. And when you see people finishing like that, you know that if they're in a quality race where the race is kind of like moving fast, where everyone's on pace to go 43 or 44.0, just kicking like that, he may snatch a 43.9 disrespectfully. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how he does. Hudson was in a really great position. Matthew Hudson-Smith was in a really great position. He just tends to fade. His body position tends to get a little wonky in the last 50 meters. He has like an interior pelvic tilt. I understand, running the 400 as well. Those body positions can kind of get away from you in the last part of your run. So it was really dope to see him maintain that. He looked really good at Prefontaine, not so good in the last 50 meters here. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he does. Norwood looked really good through 300. I think he's really gearing himself into shape. It's probably his last 400 that he's going to run before USA's. Again, a lot of these athletes have not run their championships yet. Jamaica ran their championships. A lot of these other places like a Botswana, like some of these Caribbean islands, they don't. A lot of them don't have championships because they don't have enough athletes. They just need athletes to get the standard. So, a lot of these other athletes, they're still training. They're still trying to work through their training cycles and training blocks to ensure that they can peak in the proper space. So I'm very interested to see, with Vernon Norwood having a season's best at this fast track in London, how that's going to transition to a USA 400, because I know he wants to get an open spot. There are a lot of guys running really, really fast hundreds this year, really fast 400s this year, running 43 seconds high. But no one's really walking away with it at this point. Everyone's just really, really going into the dogfight. So we're really going to see how Norwood does, but I'm pretty confident that, he'll peak how he's supposed to, because again, this year it looks like it's going to take like a 44.1 fat or faster, 44.2 or faster to be able to get that spot, especially if Oregon has good weather, right? All right, so that's it for the 400-meter dash for men. And finally, we're going to talk about our last event. We're talking about the women's 400-meter hurdles. And this was, again, the Femke Bol show. It seems like every Diamond League that she's in that doesn't have Sydney McLaughlin or Dalila Muhammad, there's no one that's really touching her. What was really impressive about her run was that it was, of course, dominant. She talks about some of her race strategies, how she's looking to close a little bit better and set up her races a little bit better. I think the last run that she ran in Monaco was a 51.95. I mean, really phenomenal running. It was a little bit rainy in London, if I remember. And I mean, the most impressive run that I saw in terms of the whole 400-meter hurdles was specifically her last 50 meters. She tends to hit another gear after the last hurdle, which is really impressive and really important to notice because a lot of places get taken in the last 50 meters because a lot of people don't have the lactic tolerance or their aerobic abilities kind of decline from there. So it's really dope to see that she's been working on it. She's continuously working on it. I mean, we see her in the 4x4, we see her in the mixed 4x4, we see her in the open 400. She has such a unique ability that when everyone else is tired, when everyone is trying to set up their 400 and lead at the 250, she's very patient. And in the last 50 meters, it seems like she just comes on out of nowhere to take a spot. So I'm very interested to see how she's able to do that against more formidable opponents. And at this point, there's only maybe 2 or 3 athletes that can do so. With that being Dalila Muhammad this year because she's in phenomenal shape, and of course Sydney McLaughlin as they kind of gear up for some of these championship races. Can't leave out Jasmine Jones from the University of Southern California. She set up her race really great. I'm not sure if it's her opening 400 meter hurdle race of the year, but she ran it like a veteran for someone who's very new to the circuit. She ran it really well. She looked really smooth. She didn't look like she overpressed too much in the last hurdle, which really made Femke Bow's last 50 look more impressive because she ran away with it. She was fully open. You could tell that Jasmine, I don't want to say she was tying up a bit, but her stride definitely shortened up. Femke Bow stays very open. So it's just very important to see just the differences. But I mean, 53.18 on an opening. I'm not sure if it's an opener, but I think it is. Her opening 400-meter hurdle race is really impressive, especially going into the USA trials where there's not many women under 53.5, I want to say, right? There's not many women in the USA's that's running under 53.5. You have Dalila Muhammad and a Cockrell. I can't name anybody else who's really running those paces to be able to do it. And you talk about these athletes also have to run rounds too, and Dalila Muhammad and a Cockrell come from a very strength-based program, so they're going to be able to run those rounds. And of course Sydney McLaughlin, but she's world champion, so I don't think they're gonna be taking 4 there. So really, really interesting. Also, on this last point before we get out of here, I was watching some interviews of Femke Bol, and very, very interesting. A lot of athletes that see the 400-meter hurdles and see the way she finishes her 4x4s. The biggest question they ask is like, "Yo, how can I finish like that? It's so impressive. What does she do for training?" She was in an interview and the question was, I think, by English Gardner after her race. They were like, "Yo, how do you manage to finish these 400 so great? What do you do in practice for your 300s? Do you have any times that you can drop?" And Femke Bol was playing coy and like, "Oh no, I don't run the 300s like that. Or I don't really remember, but I really prefer 500s more than 300s." And I don't know about y'all, but if you ran track before, unless you run in the 800 or the 1500, no one really prefers 500s over 300s. So it really goes to show the level of talent, the level of athlete that she is to like 500s more than 300s. And it also shows why she's able to pick apart these athletes in the last 100, 75 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters, and why she's been able to do damage every single year. And she's like the mixed relay 4x4's worst nightmare when it comes to finishing up on last leg. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a nice little breakdown of London's Diamond League, at least the races that I saw. There were some more dope races, the 800, the 1500. It was really cool to see Marco Arap and the guy from Kenya, I don't even know his name, but Winyoni, I think is his name, to see Donovan Brazier come back and run a 143.08. That USA's 800 is looking to be real dope. There's a lot of quality races. The women's mile ended up being a meet record and a record for USA athletes. For Jessica Hole came through. There was a lot of different athletes that did their thing. 5Ks, the women's 800 was super elite. We're looking at the kind of talent that we may not see, like the likes of like a Thing Mo or some of these other athletes of the past come back and snatch any medals for USA, other than athlete that we saw today, she got second place in 800, running 156. We're not going to see the usual names that we see in the 800. Looks like it's changing at the guards. The 800-meter women are going to have to drop something pretty interesting at USA's to really be in contention. 157 is starting to be the standard for British women at this point. So they're going to have to take it up a notch. But other than that, like I said, really, really phenomenal races. I want to thank you guys for watching. This is D Brown with Track Headz. Peace.